No, I don't know who you are. GloRilla's drug arrest has been public news for a while, but her recent behavior in court might have made things worse. Word is she showed up acting casual, which got the judge angry and turned the situation ugly. Could this little stunt put her behind bars? Stick around, we're breaking it all down. On Saturday night, July 19, 2025, while most people were either hanging out on the block or relaxing at home, GloRilla was in Indianapolis performing at the WNBA All-Star Game, rapping during halftime with Let Her Cook, Typo, and TGI. She was living the dream, shining on one of the biggest stages in women's sports, completely unaware that back in Georgia, her world was about to be flipped upside down. Around 1:30 in the morning, while Glo was probably celebrating or heading back to her hotel, 3 masked suspects broke into her house in the St. Marlowe subdivision in Forsyth County, Georgia. This wasn't some random smash and grab by desperate people looking for quick cash. This was a calculated, planned move, and according to her legal team, the thieves likely knew she wouldn't be home. But here's where it gets intense. Glo wasn't alone in that house. Her family members were there and ended up traumatized after the intruders violated their space. Imagine being in someone's home thinking you're safe, then suddenly hearing glass break and footsteps where they don't belong. These weren't amateur thieves grabbing a TV and running either. The suspects went straight for high-value jewelry before leaving, showing they knew exactly what to take and where to find it. That kind of inside knowledge makes you wonder who's giving the streets information about Glo's lifestyle, her jewelry collection, and especially when she'd be gone. And here's where it gets truly serious. One of the people in the house was armed and ready to protect the place, firing shots at the intruders and making them scatter like roaches when the lights come on. Thank God nobody got hit. Not the people defending the house, and not even the suspects who honestly deserved to catch some heat. This detail matters because it shows the person holding it down wasn't trying to kill anyone, just protecting the family and property like they were supposed to. The family did what any law-abiding citizen should do when something foul happens. They called the police. They were victims of a violent street crime. They defended themselves legally, and they wanted the criminals caught and locked away. What happened next will make your blood boil and have you questioning everything you thought you knew about how police really prioritize things in America. The deputies showed up to investigate the burglary and started doing their job because shots had been fired, which made sense. Bullets were flying, crimes were committed, and evidence needed to be collected. Major crimes detectives and the crime scene unit got involved, showing that the authorities were treating this as the violent felony it was. But then something suspicious happened that turned the whole case upside down. While investigating, the deputies claimed they smelled a strong odor of illegal narcotics. Now picture this clearly. These officers came to handle a serious violent crime with shots fired, property stolen, and dangerous criminals on the loose. Yet instead of staying focused on catching the armed burglars, they switched their attention to the smell of weed.
They got a search warrant, and authorities discovered what they called a significant amount of marijuana in a bedroom closet.
So now they called in the Leaner Regional Drug Task Force and started getting search warrants for the property. Think about all the resources wasted here. A whole drug task force, extra officers, and piles of paperwork for warrants, all while the real criminals who terrorized this family were getting farther away with every passing minute. When they executed the search warrant, they claimed to find a significant amount of marijuana in the master bedroom closet, plus some unspecified controlled substance. WSB-TV reported they found about 2 pounds of weed and some THC wax during their little treasure hunt. Now here's the part that'll have you ready to flip tables. GloRilla was hundreds of miles away, performing at a nationally televised sporting event with thousands of witnesses and cameras capturing her every move. She had the most airtight alibi anyone could dream of, yet somehow she was about to become the only person facing charges in this whole situation. The weed and other substances were supposedly in plain view, which raises uncomfortable questions. If this stuff was really sitting out like that, why didn't the people staying at the house, who were supposed to care about GloRilla's well-being and reputation, handle it before calling the police? Or better yet, why didn't they clean up immediately after the burglars left and before law enforcement showed up? This brings us to some street knowledge everybody needs to understand. The people you trust can either protect you or set you up. And sometimes you don't know which one it is until it's too late, based on the drugs they claim to find. During the burglary investigation, authorities issued arrest warrants. And here's where the story gets even more twisted. The victim of a violent home invasion, who wasn't even in the same state when it happened, was now facing serious felony charges that could send her away for years. Next, we'll look at how GloRilla's legal team came out swinging, the public outrage that followed, and the disturbing pattern of how the system really works when it comes to our people. But first, we need to understand exactly what happened when GloRilla found out she was wanted and how her response sparked even more controversy about celebrity justice in America. This is how they did GloRilla dirty with those charges. Alright, now we get to the part where things go completely left, and I need y'all to pay attention to every detail because this matters for understanding how ridiculous our justice system can be when it decides to make an example out of one of our people. What happened next is real controversial, and the way it played out shows how they can flip the narrative on you faster than you can say "free my homie." GloRilla kept it 100 and voluntarily turned herself into Forsyth County Jail on July 22, 2025 after authorities issued arrest warrants based on the drugs they said were found during the burglary investigation. Think about that move for a minute. Shorty could have fought being sent back, hired expensive lawyers to delay the process, or tried to make the whole thing disappear with behind-the-scenes politics, but instead, she did what most real ones would do. She faced it head-on with her chest out, but the charges she was hit with were not a joke. She was charged with 2 felony offenses under Georgia law: felony possession of marijuana for possessing more than 1 ounce of loud and possession of a Schedule I controlled substance. In Georgia, this is not a slap on the wrist, and if convicted on the felony marijuana count, Shorty was facing 1 to 10 years behind bars. To be clear, while the people who ran up in her house and terrorized her family were still running free, GloRilla was facing the possibility of up to a decade locked up for substances supposedly found in her own crib during the investigation into the crimes committed against her. That's some backwards logic if I ever heard it. She bonded out the same day for $22,260, but the damage to her reputation and the stress of facing serious charges were already starting to pile up. Imagine being in her position. You just came off a successful performance at a major sporting event, feeling like you're on top of the world, only to find out you've got a warrant for your arrest and could be facing prison time. The legal situation made it even worse. While weed has been decriminalized in many states, it's still illegal in Georgia except for limited medical use of low THC oil, and that felony classification for having over an ounce shows how strict the drug laws still are in Forsyth County. This isn't California or Colorado. This is Georgia, where the laws are still stuck in that 1980s just say no era. But GloRilla wasn't about to take this lying down. On July 24, 2025, she went on social media to address the situation directly, and her response was explosive. Her post on X was straight fire. Crazy. My house got home invaded Saturday while I was in Indianapolis performing for the WNBA All-Star Game. And instead of focusing on finding the suspects, they focus on some cannabis. 1. I wasn't busted. 2. My house got robbed. 3. I wasn't home. Long story short, my house gets home invaded, and I'm the only one that gets arrested. She made sure to emphasize that she was at a high-profile, nationally televised event, giving her an airtight alibi, and she used the word cannabis instead of weed or loud, likely on advice from her legal team to sound more professional. She also highlighted the absurdity of the situation. The victim of a violent crime was the only one arrested, but GloRilla didn't stop there. She flipped the negative into a positive by selling $40 merchandise featuring her mugshot, similar to what Travis Scott did after his legal issues, and TMZ even called her mugshot great looking. She was literally making money off what was supposed to destroy her career. Meanwhile, her legal team wasn't playing either. GloRilla's attorneys, Marissa Goldberg and Drew Finling from the Finling law firm, released a statement that was basically a declaration of war against the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office, calling the arrest a disturbing look at how warped law enforcement priorities have become. Listen to what this legal expert had to say about the situation.
Well, if you don't have anything to hide, you don't hide anything. So my view was she shouldn't have had the weed in her house. And obviously there had to be enough where the smell was overwhelming and law enforcement on a call to protect her found, oops, we got to do it.
But here's where her legal team's arguments get real spicy and should have every person in America concerned about police overreach. First, GloRilla was the victim of a violent home invasion, not a suspect. That should be common sense. But apparently these officers needed it spelled out. Second, her family members who were there during the burglary did the right thing by calling the police, but the officers shifted their focus to what they described as a small amount of marijuana, which directly contradicted the sheriff's claim of finding a significant amount. Third, and most damning, law enforcement went through the trouble of getting search and arrest warrants for GloRilla, who hadn't been at her home for some time, yet not a single arrest warrant was issued for the violent burglars. Her attorneys called the whole situation unbelievable and a complete waste of taxpayer dollars. They weren't just defending their client, they were calling out an entire system that seemed more interested in making headlines by arresting a celebrity than in solving violent street crimes. The legal team put a spotlight on the trauma GloRilla's family endured during the home invasion and criticized the lack of progress in catching the actual suspects. Think about it, innocent people were terrorized in their own home, had guns pointed at them, feared for their lives, and the ones responsible were still walking free while the victim was being prosecuted, but the sheriff's office wasn't. Backing down, Sheriff Ron Freeman addressed the situation, saying, "The homeowner is a victim of a serious crime, and we are committed to bringing the suspects to justice. At the same time, we must continue to uphold and enforce the law in all aspects of this case." This statement perfectly shows the problem. They admitted she was a victim while still treating her like a criminal. The legal expert then explained how they tried to justify this situation.
Circumstantial evidence. If I went to bed last night, there was no snow on the ground. I woke up this morning, there was snow, hardly likely in Atlanta today, and we know it snowed somehow. They smell marijuana, and as a result of that, they executed a search warrant, and what did they find? Well over an ounce, which is a felony.
The Forsyth County Sheriff's Office confirmed that the burglary investigation was still active, with detectives claiming they recovered physical and trace forensic evidence from the suspects, but as of July 27, 2025, no arrest had been made. For the actual burglary, let me break this down. Days after the incident, with all the resources of the county sheriff's office, a regional drug task force, and major crimes detectives, they couldn't catch 3 burglars who left physical evidence behind, yet they managed to arrest the victim within days. The streets reacted exactly how you'd expect, with people on Twitter calling out the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office for focusing on GloRilla's drug charges instead of the burglary. One user posted, "GloRilla said no arrests for suspects were made after her home was burglarized, but she was the one arrested for weed possession there." People agreed the police did her dirty. Major outlets like the Washington Post, TMZ, Fox 5 Atlanta, WSB-TV, People, CNN, and The Guardian all covered the story, emphasizing how backwards it was that GloRilla was both the victim and the one arrested. When this many big-name media sources cover the same story from the same angle, it tells you just how bad the situation really was. But now it's time to look at the bigger picture and ask some tough questions about the people she had around her that night and whether this was just bad luck or something more calculated. This is where the real tea comes in, and some hard questions about loyalty. Because while most people focused on whether the police overreached, which they clearly did, there's another side to this story that reveals uncomfortable truths. about the streets, loyalty, and the people you keep in your circle when you make it to the top. Let's be real about the elephant in the room that everyone's dancing around, but no one wants to address. How did GloRilla end up being the only person catching charges when she wasn't even in the same state? The answer to that question opens the door to some disturbing possibilities that should concern anyone who's ever trusted somebody with their freedom, their reputation, or their life. This incident sparked conversations about systemic issues, especially how Black Americans are targeted disproportionately for marijuana-related offenses. While that is absolutely real and part of a larger pattern of injustice in our system, I want to focus on something even more important for our people to understand. The people you trust can either protect you or destroy you, and sometimes the difference isn't clear until it's too late. Let's think logically about what happened that night. 3 armed burglars broke into GloRilla's home, and family members who were there got traumatized by the violent intruders. Shots were fired to defend the property, and the criminals ran off. The family called the police. Here's the crucial part: there was a significant gap between when the police were called and when they arrived to investigate. During that time, everyone in the house knew the law was coming, that there would be questions, searches, and heavy scrutiny. They knew GloRilla, as the homeowner and celebrity, would face the most exposure and risk. So here's my question: if you truly cared about protecting someone who was providing for you, giving you a place to stay, and whose success was probably helping you in many ways, wouldn't your first move be to make sure nothing in the house could get them in trouble? This isn't victim blaming. GloRilla is clearly the victim of both violent crime and police overreach, but it raises serious questions about the people in her inner circle and whether they really had her back when it mattered most. Think about it. The weed was found in the master bedroom closet, obviously GloRilla's private space. The people staying in her home would have known that anything found in her bedroom would be pinned on her and that she faced the most risk. Yet somehow, that evidence stayed exactly where the law would find it and where it could do the most damage to her life and career. This wasn't GloRilla's first run-in with Georgia law enforcement. Back in April 2024, she was arrested in Gwinnett County for DUI after making an illegal U-turn at a red light, with police claiming they smelled weed and alcohol. This prior incident adds context to the 2025 arrest and shows a pattern of legal troubles in the same state.
Do you know who I am? No, ma'am. Oh.
Now here's where this story connects to a darker pattern in the entertainment industry. This case reminded a lot of people of what happened to Juice WRLD, where the people around him were present during his legal troubles, while the circumstances were different. The underlying question remains the same. When someone reaches celebrity status and becomes a cash cow, are the people around them truly loyal or just there for the benefits? One analyst broke it down perfectly. Why didn't they get that stuff out of the house and protect GloRilla? Because many people don't understand the concept of snitching. Snitching isn't just talking to the police, it's also the unspoken rule in many celebrity circles that everyone around the star benefits from their success. But when legal trouble hits, it's every person for themselves. The people living in luxury off GloRilla's success, staying in her house and enjoying her generosity, somehow couldn't bother to spend 5 minutes protecting her from a situation that could have destroyed her career and sent her away for up to a decade. But let's also look at law enforcement's side, because their behavior was equally problematic, just in a different way. The fact that they went after GloRilla for drug charges while the burglars remained free was seen by many as another example of racial bias in policing. This isn't speculation. It's a documented pattern studied extensively. When you're a young, successful Black woman in the South, you already have a target on your back. Add celebrity status, wealth, and influence, and you become an even bigger target for law enforcement agencies wanting headlines and to prove they're tough on crime, even if that means ignoring violent criminals to prosecute someone for possessing a plant, the legal expert explained the broader implications.
Oh, absolutely. If someone who is charged with a crime volunteers, gives him, or in this case, herself up, the prosecutors, the DA's office, and the DA's office in Versailles is very good. They will likely reduce this, depending on the amount, could easily be reduced to a misdemeanor. But again, it depends on the amount and how it was packaged.
Despite all this legal drama, GloRilla still performed at the WNBA All-Star Game just hours after the burglary and kept her career moving forward. She was scheduled to perform at her first annual Glo Bash in Memphis on July 25, 2025. Alongside artists like Mooney Long and Rob 49, the fact that she managed to maintain her professional commitments while dealing with this legal nightmare shows incredible strength and professionalism. Her debut album, Glorious, dropped in 2024, and hits like Yaglo and TGIF solidified her status as one of hip-hop's rising stars, earning cosigns from legends like Rihanna and even visits to the White House in March 2024. This wasn't some minor celebrity facing legal troubles. This was a major rising star who had earned respect from the biggest names in the game and had been invited to the White House. The potential consequences she faced were serious. If convicted on the felony marijuana possession charge, GloRilla could face 1 to 10 years in prison in Georgia. The charge for the Schedule I controlled substance could also carry significant jail time depending on what it was and how much. Think about what this means. A woman who worked her whole life to escape the streets, built a successful career through talent and hard work, supported family members, and created opportunities for others, was now facing losing everything because of substances found in her own home after she was the victim of a violent crime. As of the latest reports, the burglary investigation remains open, with the sheriff's office still pursuing forensic evidence, but the lack of arrests for the suspects continues to fuel criticism from GloRilla's team and supporters. Weeks later, the violent criminals who terrorized innocent people are still free, while their victim continues to face felony charges. This case shows everything wrong with our justice system's priorities. It reveals how law enforcement can lose focus on what really matters, protecting innocent people and catching dangerous criminals in favor of flashy arrests that bring headlines and boost stats. It also shows how the people closest to celebrities can sometimes fail them when it matters most. GloRilla's response, turning her mugshot into merchandise, speaking out publicly, and hiring strong legal representation, shows she understands the game and knows how to fight back. But she shouldn't have had to fight this battle in the first place. The streets are watching, and this case will be remembered as an example of how the system can flip the script on you in an instant, and how important it is to surround yourself with people who will truly hold you down when it counts. Like this video, click on the card showing on your screen for more.